Hello, you are listening to From Maclay to Zama. I'm your host, Karen Miller. This podcast is about the adventures of two women from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who worked for the U.S. Army at Camp Zama, Japan, from 1953 to 1955. Their stories are told through hundreds of letters written home. Welcome to episode 27, letters 76 to 79. Letter 79 included some newspaper clippings that I found interesting. First, this. I never expected Punxsutawney Phil to make an appearance in this tale. Well, maybe it's not Punxsutawney Phil, but close. Peg enclosed this article, Groundhog Sees Shadow, Quarryville, PA. Quarryville is in Lancaster County, which isn't far from Harrisburg. And this is what the article says. The Quarryville Lodge of Slumbering Groundhogs saw their scientific forecaster yesterday. Charles F. Hess, hibernating governor, reported 5 squads of searchers reported almost simultaneously the groundhog saw his shadow at 7:38 a.m. and promptly scurried back into his den, presaging 6 more weeks of winter weather. The 5 reports were the greatest number in history, Hess reported. The searchers, wearing their traditional nightgowns and high silk hats, began their hunt for the marmota in the shivery pre-dawn. They carried shepherd crooks. They also carried Geiger counters and walkie-talkies. So, I thought it was interesting equipment they carried with them. And remember Helen, I think I've told you, grew up Amish. So then I had to do some research about that. And yes, it turns out that it's an Amish tradition. It came in the Germans in Pennsylvania kept it up. But I had never realized that connection before. She also included an article from the Stars and Stripes about Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio having their honeymoon in Japan. Something else I didn't know. Apparently, they decided to turn a baseball promotional junket into their honeymoon. Joe toured the baseball teams, the different teams' locations, and she entertained the troops in Korea in the snow. So, here's this article. Tokyo, February 3rd. America's Princess of Pulchritude, which means beauty. Marilyn Monroe, dressed in a skin-tight, flaming red dress, which had a habit of creeping up over her knees, turned on her 100-degree charm late yesterday at a press conference attended by more than 150 reporters and cameramen. Marilyn did most of the talking while Joe sat at her side and smiled at occasional remarks. We're all overwhelmed at this, the blonde film star said. Outfitted in the bright dress with black collar, black pumps, seamless stockings, carrying black gloves and a fox fur piece, and wearing a tiny pearl choker, which she said O'Doul gave her. The shapely bride said she might have some news about that later, when asked if she would visit Korea. If I could get a piano player, I might sing some songs in the hospitals there, she replied. However, the question of a Korean trip was left undecided until the twosome have had a chance to complete plans here. As numerous questions were asked about the number of children she planned, Marilyn gave non-committal answers until Joe turned with a broad smile and said, "Why don't you ask me that question?" Miss Monroe pointed out that there were several Hollywood actors she enjoyed working with, but then turned and put her arm around DiMaggio, "But this is my favorite man." Asked if she thought home life and career would mix, Joe answered for her, "It's going on every day." When queried if she still followed her custom of not wearing lingerie, the only answer the famous actress would give was, "I'm planning on getting a Japanese kimono." So I read another article that detailed some of the questions they asked her. I thought, I was surprised. I thought that there was more discretion back then, but they asked her some pretty kind of creepy personal questions. The link to that article will be on the website. And so let's get right into letter 76. It was written January 28th, 1954 by Peg. Dear Mother and Daddy, I'm glad I got the fuzz out of the pen, aren't you? My writing schedule is really off base this week. There isn't too much news, but I just feel like writing to you. I had 2 teeth filled today. The darn dentist went through my mouth like a bulldozer. He didn't even ask me whether I wanted Novocaine. But as it turns out, the roots either aren't there or they're dead because neither one of them hurt when he drilled. I guess that bridge work will be the first thing on the list when I get home, because I looked at the back of my front teeth tonight with the help of 2 mirrors, and they look awful. They still look the same from the front, but I was really shocked when I looked at the back. I think I've been pretty lucky, though, to have gone this long without having any partial plates, because Dr. Chiefly always said I would have false teeth by the time I was 21. Fooled him by 4 or 5 years, didn't I? Anne finally came back. I was so glad to see her. But I don't think she's too glad to be back. Everyone asked her how the States looked, and she said they were just wonderful. The thing that impressed her most was frozen foods. She had been away for 4 years, and she said she doesn't think people should load up with a lot of Japanese junk because there are so many lovely things back in the States now, which is true, because the more we see it, the junkier the stuff looks. The day after she came back, Colonel Goria told her that she must think about letting Irish, that's me, go back to the colonels because they're hollering for me. She said that she couldn't possibly do the work herself, and she needed me, at least until Lieutenant Israeloff's replacement came. So he said, well, Irish did it by herself for 3 weeks, so why can't you? Star in my crown, ho-ho. Byrne saw Captain Schaefer, the Jerko administrative assistant at Sagamihara the other day, and he told her I was doing a wonderful job and was above average. More crap, because lots of times I just pretended to be busy. I'm really itching to work at a job I like and that I can feel a sense of responsibility. I can see now how much I did like my job at Polyclinic Hospital, but if I'm lucky enough to get another one as interesting, I'm going to get paid for it. I'm tired of having tons of experience to put on work records and nice recommendations. If I'm as efficient as people say I am, then by gum, the next job is going to pay for my efficiency. I really haven't changed. I bust off my mouth and declare up and down such and such a thing and end up doing just what I said I wouldn't. So I'll probably work for $25 a week the next time. I have to laugh at Jeanette and Byrne because when I start in on one of my favorite spiels, they start nodding their heads and saying, yes, we know. And they know darn well I'm talking through my head again. I got 3 good books from the library tonight. I'm becoming a recluse. It's too darn cold to go out much, and I just have the reading bug for a while. Besides, that jerk, old Red Dog, hasn't called for a while. If he doesn't call by tomorrow night, our beautiful romance is off. That's his time limit, although he doesn't know it. And it's just too much trouble to look for a new beau, so I guess I'll read all the books in the Zama library between now and July. Love all 3 of you, Irish. Letter 77 was from Byrne, written the 26th of January, 1954. Hi, Harnishes. Takasan Mizu. That's what Japanese janitor said to me yesterday as I walked in the door. How right he was. There is indeed much snow in these here parts. It began to snow early Saturday afternoon, and except for intermittent pauses, continued until noon on Monday. Snow in Japan is just as pretty coming down and just as ugly and slushy and hard to manage once it's on the ground. Our nearby mountains are lovely, though. They are the rocky type and have lots of little humps and bumps, which now are filled in with snow and cause them to stand out against the horizon. We walk around with stadium boots and warm scarves and stoles, which we use both for head covering and shawls. And someone told me this part of Japan didn't get very cold. My friend Dottie and Ed Jones leave for the States on Friday. Boo-hoo. No more home-cooked meals. I'm taking the day off, going down to the port in Yokohama to wave goodbye, and then going to Tokyo to get a haircut and spend the evening with Jeanette. Frances Noguchi, a Nisei friend of Dottie's and mine, is going to make a lei of flowers to give her as a sayonara present. I will pay for half the cost, and that will then come from both of us. Don't you think that's an appropriate sailing away gift? Last Saturday morning, I went into civilian personnel to see about getting a different job. They promised to circulate my Form 57, a standard government form showing education, previous jobs held, etc. But actually, they were rather non-committal about promising anything. There is a great economy program going over here, and offices are cutting down on personnel rather than hiring. However, some jobs, of course, will have to be filled, and I just might qualify for one of them. In the meantime, the job I am holding now has been rewritten and just might be considered worth a higher rating. So I will not do anything hasty, but wait a while and see what develops. Jeanette, no, it was Velma, just gave me these snapshots. I'm not putting snapshots into my scrapbook, but will continue to keep them in my album at home. So you just look at them and then put them away somewhere to keep for me. Dajobi? When you see Shirley, please give her $2 plus whatever she tells you the postage was on mailing a hat over here. Vi Domenecki wanted one, just like the one Shirley sent me. Because I thought Shirley made it, I asked her to send Vi one. She didn't make the hat, but did find another one and has mentioned in her last letter that she's sending it. So please pay her. Thank you. I reckon you better make out a check for $10 and send in the enclosed envelope to International CE. I must send some to Pennsylvania CE. I must send some activities too, but wait a while until I send you further instructions on that. We do hope you didn't get excited or upset when you received our birthday cable. It was one of those canned messages which you can order by number, and I certainly do hope it didn't become garbled, as did my bosses. She sent a birthday cable to her son. The correct number for this message was 59. The cablegram people sent message number 69, which read, "All well, children evacuated." Her son, who is 17, enclosed the cable in his next letter and said, "Mother, I don't understand. Are you keeping something from us?" Betty and Major King and I sat and had hysterics when she received that letter. As you can see, this is not my day for being bright and scintillating, and I can't think of another thing to tell you. Guess you'll have to wait until spring comes. Right now, we can't go in places or do anything. I'm in favor of being a bear and hibernating. I had a letter from Esther this morning. She's okay. Here's a cute poem she included. She says it fits her present predicament exactly. I would I were beneath a tree, sleeping in the shade, with all the bills I've got to pay, paid. I would I were beside the sea or sailing in a boat, with all the letters I've to write, wrote. I would I were on yonder hill, a-bathing in the sun, with all the things I've got to do, done. That's all, folks. Love, Vern. She also included an article titled Utagaruta. It means poem card parties, which are held through January in Japanese homes. This game is formerly played only in aristocratic circles, but in the Meiji era, it became the foremost social function at which young men and women were given the rare opportunity of meeting and enjoying long evenings together. It is also called Haikunen Isshu, one poem each by 100 poets. As it is, these poems are written in the cards. This collection of poems was made by a 13th century poet, selecting the best poems of 100 outstanding poets. On one set of 100 cards are written the first half of the poems, and on the second set are the last part of the poems. The game is to find the second card as the reader reads the first half. The second set of cards is divided among those present who lay them down in front of themselves. As the reader, who does not participate in the game, reads the first set of cards, the players look for the corresponding card in their lot. But if it's not there, they can look for it among other people's cards. If one should pick up a card in another's lot, he wins a point and gives one of his cards to that person. The person who gets rid of all his cards first wins the game. The game requires considerable skill and memory work. Annually, a national championship game is held. Children have their own version called alphabet cards, which consists of two sets, one bearing popular sayings and another with pictures and illustrations of the sayings. As the card is read, the children pick up the corresponding picture card. There are also flower cards, which have pictures of flowers and natural phenomenon of the 12 months of the year. All those Japanese cards developed from the Western playing cards first brought by the Portuguese to Japan, but they have changed and been incorporated into these games that originally had been played by ancient peoples. Cards became popular since the beginning of the 16th century here. This is letter 78, written by Byrne on February 2nd, 1954. Dearest Mama and Papa-san, the cable was supposed to have read, "Loving birthday greetings." By this time, I'm sure you have received our later letters, which mentioned the cable, so you have figured out that it was simply a case of a scrambled message, but I'm repeating this information just in case. There was no illness, and anyhow, we wouldn't have cabled about a situation of that kind, so just relax. Life in Japan does have its minor irritations, the above mix-up being typical. Finally, I'm going to do something useful over here. Last night, Peg, Mary, and I went to the 8169th Hospital and were interviewed by the Red Cross field director to see if we were suitable applicants for the Gray Ladies course. We passed muster, and now, around February 15th, we will take instructions for 3 nights a week for 2 weeks, and then we will begin to work as Gray Ladies, either over there or possibly occasionally in Yokohama, but mainly here at our next-door neighbor, the 8169th Hospital. I'm very pleased at the prospect because a 6 months vacation from usefulness is much too long. Last Sunday, we went to the neighboring village of Haramashita. Yeah. It is a typical Japanese shopping center. The narrow street is lined with hundreds of small shops, each one selling mainly one product. Over here, there's no such foot saver as a 5 and 10 or even a department store, except in really large cities like Yokohama and Tokyo. The shopper must go from store to store, buying one item here and another there. When time is not important and shopping is one's only project for the afternoon, this can be fun. For about $1, I bought a darling tea set consisting of the teapot and 5 covered cups. It is a pale green with a lovely, graceful bamboo design on it. For the office, I got a small, cheap pot, such as the Japanese themselves use. Betty and I fill it with water first thing in the morning, and in an hour or two, depending on the mood of our space heater, the water is hot enough to have a cup of Nescafe or tea. I feel like just a Japanese mama-san as I make the long trek down the corridor and upstairs to secure water from the fountain in the ladies' room. The Japanese, you know, are always carrying their little teapots or rice bowls with them. You can imagine the kidding I must take from the office people. As cold as it is, the hot drink is worth it. However good and interesting Richard B.'s sermons are, by the way, I do wish you could hear Chaplain Whipple. He seems to be especially interested in the Old Testament applications, and he can paint a word picture of some event which makes you actually believe you are seeing it come to life. After last Sunday, I certainly am much better acquainted with King Hezekiah than from any other previous source of information. The chapel is far more crowded these days than at any time since we've been here. Dad, either of us ever tell you of the excitement of seeing someone off the port? For an hour before the ship sails, you may go on board and visit. You can see your friend's cabin, sit in the lounge on the promenade deck, or go outside to talk and say goodbye. Then the loudspeaker announces, "All visitors ashore." You kiss your friends. I kissed Ed too. He's such a doll. And then rush over to the second floor deck or balcony of the port building to get a good spot on the railing so you can watch the actual maneuvering of the ship getting ready to sail. In the meantime, you on shore and your friends on the ship are throwing bright-colored streamers back and forth so that in a few minutes the space between the ship and the shore is a bright, tangled web of color. The Army band marches out from inside the port building, playing such touching songs as China Night, So Long, It's Been Good to Know You, California, Here I Come, and Auld Lang Syne. At this point, it's permissible to shed a few tears. At least it must be permissible because practically everyone is doing it. Then the derrick lifts the gangplank away, and there's no longer any connection between you two. Swiftly, then, the ship gets underway, and everyone is standing on tiptoe for a last-minute glimpse of friends and waving like mad. The two little tugs move the big ship away from the dock all too quickly, and soon the ship has turned its back on you, and you can no longer see anyone. Then it's time to square your shoulders and go back to your own affairs with a feeling of thankfulness that you have known the folks and the hope that someday, somewhere, you'll see them again. Take care of yourselves, you two. Don't worry about us. Talk us in love, Burn. Letter 79 from Peg, written February 3rd, 1953, Camp Zama, and it says in parentheses, where else? Dear Mother and Daddy, my gosh, it could only happen in Japan. Naturally, I'm speaking about the cablegram illness not serious. By this time, you've gotten my letter telling you how they fouled up Burn's boss's cable to her, so you know that we were only wishing you, Daddy, a happy birthday. Isn't that a buster? So that ends the business of sending cables, and they only cost 250 yen. I guess Burn has filled you in on all the latest news about our shopping trip to Hiramashita, where I bought some more junk, and that we're becoming gray ladies. Frankly, I think we'll have more fun out of that deal than they will. If my social life doesn't pick up soon, I'll be volunteering for duty every night instead of only once a week. My social life is practically at a standstill. No phone call from Red Dog for about 4 weeks. But I was getting tired of him anyhow. To be truthful, I think he was getting tired of me too. Friday night, I went up to the club and started talking to an army captain who I'd met several months ago. The big jerk, he said, I just want to ask one thing of you, Peggy, and that is, please don't fall in love with me. Can you imagine such conceit? So I said, well, I won't. See, all men think they're irresistible, and I think all men are jerks. We get along just fine. That same night, I gave my telephone number to a lieutenant colonel and a major. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? But I'm not too flattered because they were the usual jerks too. Oh, we get along just grand. I flatter them like mad, and all the time I'm thinking how stupid they are. Then the next day, I tell Jeanette and Vern about it when we get together to compare notes, and we all have a good laugh. We had a little bit of excitement here today. I'm back at my old job at last. Hallelujah. And one of the sergeants came back and said, condition yellow. Open the windows and pull the shades closed. I said, what? If I open the windows, I'll catch cold. What are you talking about? In the meantime, the colonels got up and opened the windows. So I followed suit, although I was completely in the dark. Major Forsyth, the dietitian, told me then that condition yellow meant unidentified aircraft in the area. Ain't that a buster? So the colonels went back to work, and I pretended to be calm and collected, but all the time I was glancing here and there thinking, now, where the hell am I going to crawl for cover in case this is something serious? So 2 minutes later, it seemed like an hour, and I thought everyone else was nuts for not doing something. Captain Schaefer called and said, condition white, back to normal. It would be very nice, indeed, if someone would tell us what these color conditions mean. What color was my condition on that trip? I do know that the condition green means that the communists are having demonstrations in a park or on the street. We get notices that such and such a street or area is in condition green, and in that case, that area is off limits, even to the extent that no pictures can be taken by security forces personnel. Yes, I'm back with the colonels. I guess they were glad to see me. They all said so anyhow. Colonel Van Tool isn't in this week, though, because he's having gallbladder trouble. I wonder what color that condition would be. And he's having tests made. So he told me to look out for his interest, and he calls every day to make sure I am. Today I typed up some letters for the general's signature that Colonel Francher had dictated. It was a lot of typing and lots of paper. Colonel Francher went out for a while this afternoon, and I had them finished when he got back. Then he reads them and discovers he didn't put in one very important sentence, so they have to be done over. He said, it's such a nice day, too. And I said, yeah, why did you come back? Then we both laughed madly at his error, and I started doing them over again. 6 months ago, I would be pulling my hair out and muttering to myself, and now I laugh madly and wonder to myself whether I ever typed a letter that was signed, sealed, and delivered the first time. Speaking of muttering, this gal Elizabeth, she's the one who got Dottie's number 5 job that I thought I would get, is quite a character. She sits facing me and keeps up a running conversation with herself all day long. She tells herself what she must do next, and then she gets carried away and runs hither and yon to get these things done that she has been muttering to herself about. Then she makes a silly mistake and gives forth with a giggle and a pretty loud mutter on how stupid that was. Oh well, it takes all kinds. DACs here are called stateside rejects, and it's a good thing I'm coming home in a year's time because I don't want to be somebody who mutters and giggles. Did Byrne tell you that we went down to the pier at Yokohama and saw her friends sail? I was impressed, really. It was so exciting. Naturally, I wished I was going home too, but then I got a whiff of the dining saloon odors mixed with fumes of oil, and it brought back pleasant memories of the Bucking Buckner. So I'll just fill my lungs with more of this fresh-smelling Japanese air. And that, my dears, is a huge pile of fecal matter. When we went to Haramishita on Sunday, we just about gagged when we got off the train because something smelled to high heavens. It was horrible. It was probably something tasteful, exotic, Japanese food cooking, but we did not appreciate it. I was going to write only one sheet, and look at me. Saturday, going to Tokyo and to a concert in the evening. Sunday, we're going to do some shopping. There's a place called the Kimono Market where they sell lovely kimonos and happy coats. Guess what unnecessary thing I'll be buying this weekend? Speaking of kimonos, Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio are being written up all over the papers here. One reporter asked her whether it was true that she didn't wear underclothes, and she said, I'm planning to buy a kimono. Maybe I'll see her there. Just can't understand why she hasn't called yet, but I know she's busy. By the way, I asked you before, and you forgot to answer. Did you get the pictures of Sama that I sent you? Don't forget to tell me, please. Here's a clipping from the Stars and Stripes that might interest you. Pennsylvania makes the paper pretty often, and I'm so proud. Well, I must go to bed now. I'm becoming accustomed to the early hours these nights. Dear, I'm getting so settled. Love and stuff, me. Kiss Blunt for me. So, I really wonder about these codes, and I'm going to have to do some more investigation. If they were like standard, like every place in the world, do they have these same like condition yellow? And then my other question about this is, so they had to open the windows and pull the shades closed. I'm not sure I understand. Is that to keep the building from collapsing if it gets bombed? I can't imagine that part. Plus, I can see why it would be cold. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. I don't know anything about gray ladies. So that's something else to find out about. And I thought that Byrne's description of seeing off her friends was great. So I was surprised. I'm kind of surprised about the weather is just not at all what I expected. I really thought it would be a lot warmer, but not so much. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And if you are, please subscribe in Spotify. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus button in the top right-hand corner and rate. This will help my listeners find my podcast more easily. You can access the show's website at www.FromMcClayToZama.com, where I posted photos and links from the episodes. The podcast is now available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Patreon, and Amazon as well. New episodes will be available each Friday morning. The letters were written by my aunts Byrne and Peg, transcribed by me. I write and record the show and have created the artwork and original music. Our producer is Zeke, our sound engineer is intern Sylvie, and the security is provided by intern Frey. Thanks to my great-grandparents, John and Helen, who loved us all and thought it was a good idea to save the letters. All rights reserved, 2024.